And then you turn the lights out. You do it at night, and there's no street lights out there. Somebody has described that on the catapult shot off of a carrier. They said it's kind of like getting shot off into the inside of a basketball. It just got really dark really quick. They said they instrumented people in combat in Vietnam, checking their pulse, breath, blood pressure, and combat mission came in below night carrier landings as far as worth. So might get killed on combat. If I don't do this right, can get killed. That was my first at sea period in my fleet squadron. We were out in the northern Pacific. And all those things you've seen on, dangerous catch, well, we were flying off an aircraft carrier and that. We had, I think, 55-foot deck swings. So you just fly down, and the landing signal officers, who are the safety people, they're looking at your glide slope relative to the horizon, even though the ship is moving around tremendously. One engine flight controls issue, and I had a mechanical backup, which was a configuration that had never been recovered aboard an aircraft carrier before. The choice was land or probably jump out next to the ship.
Hey Jay, thanks so much for joining us here on Micro Journeys. Pleasure to have you on the podcast, and it's good. We've been longtime friends, and now get to hear your story in detail. And I'm excited for kind of the back and forth here. So.
Well, thanks, Dan. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's going to be fun.
So, as usual, I read up on your background, and it's interesting. The first thing it says is that you are a native of Waco, Texas, which is a little bit off from reality. Why don't you go ahead and describe that?
I guess what some folks would call an Army brat. So I was between tours with my dad, who was an Army aviator attached to Army armor, so tanks and that sort of thing. Got out, and he took on a program to go get a graduate degree, and Baylor was where he went. He's an experimental psychologist, PhD, and then I was born in that tour when he was at Waco, and then he got back in and for all his payback tours after that, and we got back on the Army train from there. So not really long in Waco, but that was just where it got me in to be a Texan, which was tremendous on tax advantages as I went through my military career. I could be a Texas resident for all that time. So
you get to keep the Texas,
and for a while in Texas, your driver's license, even though the expiration date on the front was good, they gave you a little piece of paper that went in, and you could keep the same driver's license all the way through your career. So you'd have a 30-year-old or a 20-year-old driver's license with your barely 23-year-old or 18-year-old or 16-year-old if you had one, a picture on the front of it. So I had some friends of mine who had their white guy afro pictures and just stuff they'd carried with them through their entire military career with a little card that says, this is not expired as long as the person's on active duty. And so you can end up in a pretty interesting spot where you have a car license in one state, a driver's license from Texas, and you're living in a third location. So.
I'm picturing, the Monopoly board here with the equivalent of, go directly to go and collect $200. Yeah. This is your Texas equivalent, right?
Well, you didn't want to get pulled over either because a police officer, like I said, you pull out a registration from one state, you got a driver's license from somewhere else, and you're in a different state, and he's like, get out of the car.
You open your wallet and it just kind of all folds down, and pick your poison. Which one do you want?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So kind of moving around quite a bit as an Army brat. Was that where you got your inspiration to join the Navy, or I guess how did that come to play?
Dad got out of the Army active after about 11 years, but he would go around and use his experimental psychology, really kind of training focused in aviation and sort of the man and training interface. What level of sensory input did you need? And he got into simulation very early with visual simulation and did some contract work from that, and then went back for the Department of the Army. One of the stints, my first real exposure to aviation was living in Fort Worth. So there was where they built the F-111. Now they build F-16s, and now they build some portions of F-35s there in the Fort Worth plant. So we'd see those airplanes flying over, and when I was a real young boy, you could fly supersonic, so you get a chance to look up when the boom would go overhead and kind of decide that that kind of was cool. And then we moved my middle school to high school years to Army's Aviation Center down in Southeast Alabama, and so the helicopters would be flying all day and all night. And my next door neighbor was a gentleman who was a civilian flight instructor who was teaching low altitude night, first generation night vision goggle flying for the Army in their Hueys. And he had been a crewman in World War II and shot down and walked out of North Africa, flying sergeant in the Korea conflict, and had flown helicopters. And I was this kid in high school around all of this aviation and thinking that's what I wanted to do. And I just asked him, I said, Mr. McKenna, what would you do? And he said, Jay Bird, if I had a chance to do it all over again, I'd fly off those carriers because that's the only place that they let you really fly anymore. And so he planted that seed and kind of took that as gospel and then went on and was fortunate enough to get a Navy ROTC scholarship that would move with me at the time. It didn't append to a particular school. And I could just at that point kind of go find a program and get involved to use that, and with an aspiration to go through Navy flight training and see if I could end up flying off of those carriers.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, we'll talk about painting a picture. I mean, thinking about, in the middle of the ocean and you're, kind of defying the situation. You're on water. It's moving around. You're landing on this substrate, flying around. I mean, if that doesn't get you going, I mean, what will, right?
Yeah, but I think it's the naivete of, you have no idea what someone says airplanes, you think boats, and I have no concept of what that means. You don't even know enough to have anxiety about it. You just have this aspiration and think you want to go do it. And, and for me, it just kind of worked out. The timing was good, Reagan years, a big demand for naval aviation. There was expansion going on, and was fortunate enough to land that as my first selection out of college, and the rest was kind of what led to a lot of fun with naval aviation.
You decide to join ROTC. Right. You get in, you submit to become a pilot, and you're selected. And from there, what is it like? I mean, you are selected. I mean, is this a crash course in flying? Is this something that how does the Navy operate in this space?
Yeah. Well, the Navy's kind of the approach to Navy is that I don't care what way we're going to treat you as if we're going to start you at square one. So everyone's treated, even though there are folks who've come in with private flying experience, or maybe even some who've flown commercially before they got into naval aviation. The Navy starts you with no knowledge and really kind of walk in the door, and everybody gets the same level of treatment. So we still do it this way. In the Navy, I say we, but you start off with aviation indoctrination and a physical. So the physical kind of sights you out, whether you have the physical capability to be an unrestricted naval aviator, to fly any, day, night, no color blindness, no night vision issues, no proception issues, motion sickness, all that stuff gets tested, and to make sure that you're 20/20 or better vision, et cetera. That's really kind of the physical cutoff. And then while you're doing those things, and you'll have had this physical 2 or 3 times, one pre-commissioning, one pre-selection to ROTC. Are you even physically qualified to enter the program for commissioning? And then as you get closer to the commissioning date after your years of education and your degree, one more for entry to see if you're still physically qualified. And then they send you down to Naval Aeromedical Institute, and they give another physical to make sure that you're ready to go. And that's really the first cut. So some folks will find out at that point they can't be a pilot. They might be able to be a naval flight officer to participate either in multi-crew or as a weapon system operator in a tactical airplane, or they can find themselves that they might be limited in their ability of what they might be able to fly fixed wing. And that's the first cut. And the aptitude piece, and it's very competitive. It's all really competitive. You walk in and it's basic we call it, the names have changed, but you get some basics on navigation, some basic on aerodynamics, and some basics on engine and types of propulsion systems. And there's a series of educations and tests, and then there's physical things, obstacle courses, running, and those sorts of things. So the Navy kind of comes in, puts you all in the soup, and then lets kind of the performers rise to the top. And that approach follows you throughout naval aviation training. And typically for someone who ends up in tactical aviation, it's about a 3-year process. From the time you started that indoctrination and that first screening to the time you've gone through all of the levels of flight training to get your wings, and then end up in your fleet aircraft that you'll end up being flying as your first tour. So it's quite a ordeal, and we've had some times in the recent past where that pipeline's gotten even a little slowed down just based on the availability of systems and platforms to do it. So quite a duration. And each one of those times, until you get your initial wings, you're subject to being diverted off based on those physical parameters or some of the other things. And selection for what platform you want versus where Navy may need to put you is also performance based. So you're ranked on a bell curve for the last 300 people going through, and they apply a standard score off of that, and the best performers get their choice, and needs of the Navy kind of matriculate through. So it's a very performance-oriented approach, and it's all graded. It's you can't party too hard in there, or you're making a career choice. You just may not know it at the time.
So as people are peeling off and they're putting this rack and stack together of who's going to get what platform that they're deciding. I'm assuming you submit in, your top 3 or your top 5 or something like that. And then either based on availability, capability, or some other factors, you're placed, right?
Right.
What was your I guess, platform of choice?
Well, I think everybody enters in, that everyone enters in with, hey, I just want to get my wings, right? You start with that because it's this ominous task that's in front of you.
That's the barrier to entry. I mean, you want to get that so you can start.
And it's the humble pie. It's sort of right out of Bull Durham. I'm one day at a time, Lord willing, it'll all work out, and I'm just do the best I can for the team. But after a while, as you start to be successful, you start to say, I want jets, I want carrier aviation. Then pretty soon they owe me something with an afterburner on it. So the ego gets built a little bit as you go. But, I wanted to kind of do what Jim McKinnon suggested, which was go fly off them carriers. And I didn't know what that was. At my time, that was really, F-18s were still pretty new, and they were only really starting to take initial undergraduate winged folks. In the past, they were transition training folks from other platforms, F4s, A7s, into those. And then, of course, the F-14 Tomcat was out there. Now, TAC Air also included A6s, which was a little more medium range, blunt, looked a little more like a bowling pin. And then, of course, the electronic attack version of that, which was a little bit stretched, but, wanted that pointy nose, afterburner, radar, knife in the teeth kind of an airplane.
Well, so you cover a spectrum of these in all of the discussions we've had. The F-18 is one of the ones that you were able to land on, right? Sure. And got an opportunity to fly a number of hours on. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming, based on what you're describing here, you were also able to take off and land on carriers, right? Sure. Describe what that is like, because as someone that has never flown and someone that has also never been on a carrier, it would be really interesting to get the perception of just how different it is from, what most of us know, which is commercial aviation.
Sure. The way Navy airplanes land, if you think about the airplane coming in, the tail hook comes off the back, and the optical landing system that sits on the left side of the landing area, angle deck on an aircraft carrier, is for the visual landing aid for the pilot has a set of datum lines, and then the reference line, light will move up and down. If it's up, you're high. If it's down, you're low. And if it's in the middle, where you want to keep it, or what we would call cresting. So if you're going to be wrong, be a little high. And that just the glide slope. But that is lined up for every airplane, regardless of length, size, or weight, is to have the tailhook point fly through the same piece of sky on a glide path to land in that landing area, which is probably 120 feet between the first wire and the last wire. The job is to fly that tailhook point down to the middle. So to do that, unlike an airline that would come in and then flare and allow the energy to dissipate here, the Navy airplane comes in a set attitude. And you hold that attitude and you fly the up-down variation with throttle.
So you're showing the belly of the plane, more or less.
Yeah, it's a little bit of cranked up in its landing attitude, and it's going to hit because you want the wheels, you want the tail hook and the main mount wheels, the two big wheels, to hit first. You don't want a 3-point and break an airplane, or you don't want to hit the nose wheel first because that can porpoise, you miss everything and break the airplane. So
want to avoid breaking the airplane.
Yeah, but they drop Navy airplanes from a pretty high static point just to make sure that they're pretty robustly built. But all the landing, that's a huge driver for carrier aviation. A lot of time practicing that landing approach because the runway's moving away from you at an angle. because it's the carrier's steaming this way, but the angle deck is there, so it's moving away at an angle. So you're always trying to crab over towards the ship, and it may also be heaving and pitching. So there's a three-dimensional problem going on there, and it can get it's the pat your head, rub your belly while riding a bicycle, and trying to do some other things with your left hand. It's a pretty busy business.
Well, a huge fan is blowing the plane because, in the air, it's not always static. I mean, you're getting crosswinds and the such. So you're drifting like this. The carrier's going in this direction. You got to land here. So there's all of these different pieces happening in tandem, right?
And then you turn the lights out and you do it at night. So, and there's no street lights out there. So it's I've heard it. Somebody has described that on the catapult shot off of a carrier, which is lit with sodium vapor lights, kind of yellow. They're very dim because you don't want to ruin people's night vision. But when you get shot off the front end at night on a moonless night or under an overcast, they say it's kind of like getting shot off into the inside of a basketball because it just got really dark really quick and there's no reference. So you kind of hang on to your artificial horizon on your heads-up display in an F-18. Some airplanes didn't even have that, so it's just purely stare at your gauge and try not to get wet and make sure things are they're going there. And in the landing at night it's amazing how small a 1,000-foot, 1,000-foot long, 100,000-ton ship can be at 3/4 of a mile back. Or if you're back there and you see it doing this, you see the landing lights starting to change perspective as the ship is pitching in rough seas. So nothing new to many people who might have heard it, but they said they instrumented people in combat in Vietnam, checking their pulse, breath, et cetera, blood pressure. And combat mission came in below night carrier landings as far as worth. So might get killed on combat if I don't do this right. Can get killed on.
Oh, geez.
And it doesn't matter peacetime, training time, whatever. You just kind of get out there. So now we have much better systems these days, and we have a thing called magic carpet on airplanes now that almost it has eliminated the workload by a factor of 20. That's really kind of the breaker because the Navy's like, hey, I don't care how great a tactician you are. If you can't be predictable and safe and get on and off the ship expeditiously, can't use you.
Yeah.
So that's the fun part of naval aviation. But as I said, early on, that's in your head quite a bit. It's those because you don't have enough experience in there to draw on to figure out where your anxiety should live and all that. But that's it's a little bit different.
So every activity that a person does repetitively, there'll be moments that stand out, right?
Sure.
I mean, everything from driving your car to, like I said, commercial aviation.
Yeah.
Was there a moment while flying the F-18 that stood out to you the most?
Well, I've had a few. I think it was my first at sea period in my fleet squadron. We were out in the Northern Pacific. This was, the wall was still up between us and the Soviet Union, and we would spend a lot of time driving the ship around without any electronic emissions, so I didn't want to be found. So how do you hide a carrier and its strike group from doing that? And we also practiced flying in pretty difficult circumstances. So we were up in early fall around the Aleutian chain and in some cases up towards the Arctic Circle. And all those things you've seen on, Dangerous Catch with Mike Rowe and those Apelio crab fishermen out there in 30-foot seas. Well, we were flying off an aircraft carrier in that. And I've on a couple of times when I was out there, brand new, like my first at sea period in the fleet. And I'm going out there, and after my recovery, my flight of 12 to 16 airplanes that were off, they run a cubby launch, and then they recover the previous event that's been out for an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. Twice after my recovery, they'd canceled flight off. So because it was, we had I think 55-foot deck swings. So you're staring at the back end of the ship here, and then there's a piece here, and the timing of when that moves is nature, not you. So you just fly down, and the landing signal officers, who are the safety people, tell you, hey, they're looking at your glide slope relative to the horizon, even though the ship is moving around tremendously.
Do you try and time it? I mean,
well, you just fly your flight, and they hope it works out. And I've had some, they give you power, first power's pretty good power. Second power is a good power. Third power is all the power you got. And the only thing left they can say is burner, which is go to full afterburner because they're trying to keep you from hitting metal in a way that you don't want to, cutting the airplane in half. So I had one of those, like that first, probably my first 6 or 7 approaches to the ship, and coming down. I think I'm just kind of in afterburner, probably doing, just the tail hook's probably a couple of feet off the ship as it pitches around me. Come back around for one more and hit so hard, I think it felt like I lost some fillings. But it was the crosshairs for where the glide slope is usually moves a little bit at sea, but it was going off the top and the bottom of the closed circuit television as it was going. So it was that was as sporty as it's ever been. But again, I was air conditioned comfort inside the airplane and not really smart enough to know that I should have been a little more anxious about all that. And then with that knowledge, some of those at night you hear. And then I had one that was far later in my career. I think I might have been squadron commander at this point, out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. I was doing a post-maintenance check flight. And one of the problems in the airplane was a nut had been in the hangar for maintenance, and you had to make sure that all that maintenance was done correctly before you could return the airplane to service. And I was one of the people qualified to do that kind of flight. And as a squadron commander, it's kind of one of my principal jobs is to make sure the equipment was safe for the rest of the team. And we went out flying, and it's near the equator, pretty hot, so performance is more difficult for the airplane. And as I took off of the carrier, one of the processes in that check was to shut down a motor and see if I could relight it. So they both with some tools in the auxiliary power to cross bleed air to propel the engine to get it restarted, or to accelerate if you had to use ram air, essentially the speed of flight to kind of get the fan blowing. Couldn't get the motor restarted. So
you're running on one motor? One
motor. Fortunately, I was a pretty slick airplane. And then as part of that, when that turns off, there's redundancies in the hydraulic system where the pressure is supposed to open up from the other side and cross feed to make sure your flight controls are still working. Well, I had some switching valve problems in that thing too, so I lost some flight controls. So one engine flight controls issue, and I had my stabulator was what they was called in mechanical backup, which was a configuration that had never been recovered aboard an aircraft carrier before. So I'm out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and I came back, and of course the plane was fantastic. So single engine, trimmed up, and it had some oscillations in it, but I got to do the world's longest straight in and burn down on my gas. But the choice was land or probably jump out next to the ship and have to get picked up. But fortunately, able to get the airplane aboard and came back in. And one of the things that you do after every landing is the Navy records each landing and evolution for safety purposes to see what you can learn or to identify what might have happened should there be a mishap or something not go quite right.
So I'm thinking of this almost like, you're at the grocery store, you get a shopping cart, right? And one of the wheels isn't working right. And you're now having to put a lot more pressure on is that how this was when you're flying?
Well, and you also significantly reduce thrust, right? So I only got one motor, and one of the things that happens on the back of a aircraft carrier, and it's making its own wind because it's essentially we're kind of in the doldrums in the middle of the Indian Ocean, so glassy sea, pretty warm because we're around the equator, as I said. So all the things that are not good for jet engine thrust and lift. So high, hot, heavies, what you say is if it's your high altitude, density altitude, it's hot outside, less air molecules, and you're a heavy airplane. So I got rid of the heavy part, but I'm single engine with backup mechanical flight controls and some other things going. So in a configuration where my response isn't really perfect because I don't have full systems flying for that, and I don't have quite the thrust. So I landed in a little bit afterburner just to kind of get over the back end right, but plane did fantastic. But I went to go, clearly I had more confidence in me than they apparently did because I went to go say, hey, can I go see my landing? They cut off the TV. So I went, thanks. I went up and talked to the captain of the ship, like, hey, thanks for the vote of confidence. I feel like people are putting stuff back in my room, In
the post-processing, we kind of cut this stuff out. But we did clean out your locker, but you know what? Everything's back where you left it.
Can I borrow these DVDs? These are pretty good.
So you mentioned something about the I guess different levels of I guess growth in the Navy, right? You were talking about all these different progressions, and you were able to take these different progressions. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, from going from pilot to ultimately I guess to where before you started taking on more of the office role, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's aviation's really a young person's game, right? Your motor skills are the best. It's very physiologically demanding. So when you first enter, your job is just to be the best tactician and be able to extract the best performance out of your platform. So that requires a tremendous amount of engineering knowledge. And the way I think about it is kind of like Jim Lovell on Apollo 13. You know, that you have to have the level of systems knowledge that exceeds the book, because at some point the book finds a limit because we'd have a new discovery, right? You know, and so you really have to understand the platform itself. Then it's about the tactics, techniques, and procedures that you do, and really that's against a threat. So what does my potential adversary have? What are our best tactical ways to survive and then be able to do our operations to project power if we need to do that or to defend our force? That's a lot to learn. So the first part of aviation is just to learn about how to fly, and then you get your wings. Then it's learn about this platform, its capabilities and limitations, and then against an adversary, and then how do we build on that? So the building blocks are the first couple of years in your platform is just become expert in your airplane. Be a great wingman. You know, right out of Top Gun, never leave your wingman, right?
Yeah.
So your job is be there, be in a mutually supported position, know the tactics, and don't be a burden where the flight lead has to think about what you're doing. You just need to be able to execute and really fully understand. And then as you master that, then once again, competitively, there's opportunities for you to learn to be that flight lead, to take care of at least 2 airplanes and then maybe up to 4 on that first tour. So that's the tactical portion. And then you go back and start become a part of the production machine. I did that as a first tour for me. So my second tour allowed me to take advantage and go fly with the Air Force on an exchange tour, flying F-15s out of an operational base. And
Which model of the 15?
C model. So It was a single seat F-15Cs out of Langley Air Force Base. So made some great lifelong friends there, you keep track with, and same warrior ethos under the flight suit, but different corporate cultures.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of it, I think, in those exchanges is to learn. Never better in a warfare area than I was as an Air Force exchange guy in the air-to-air mission. That's all they focused on. They were very, very good. It's when Navy started to make its transition to the train-the-trainer model that the Air Force had been using for a while. So really, really tactically sound with that, and what a fantastic experience. So that kind of was it was just right in the what we call the peace dividend years of the Clinton administration. So as force structure was coming down, there was those opportunities, and I that was kind of my strategic decision about what to do: stay in, get out. But if you stay in, how do you make yourself of value to the Navy? And at that point, it's how do I get broader? Because at some point, as I said, that young person's game for flying goes away. Right? The pyramid's really the base is that young cadre. You have some folks who run the organization, operations, maintenance, some squadron level leadership, but you go from maybe 7 to 10 junior officers to a commanding officer and an executive officer, right? So that's a pretty big neck down. It'll neck down again from that point. So how do you add value? And that's kind of when I decided I would go wide. You know, I watched enough to see that you can't really engineer your future. So my philosophy was pick something that would be broadening, but that I would enjoy doing. So even if it didn't work out, I didn't feel like I wasted my time or I'd somehow, you
capture some lessons learned along the way, right?
And just have a life experience. So that kind of led to the approaches to following the Navy career, which fortunately for me, that in some cases they were a little bit of a more high risk because it was a little off the beaten path, but it gave me a portfolio of things and breadth of experience that I've been able to find other avenues to plug that stuff in going since then.
So as you're taking these, like you said, it kind of necks down as you get to the pinnacle of being a pilot. And then you have the opportunity to, once again, reestablish where your career is going to go, widens out, and then it starts to shrink again. Within this time period, you had a number of different, opportunities, everything from Carrier Strike Group and being involved in that, and then ultimately helping some people over in Congress. But before we get to the congressional piece, what is Carrier Strike Group, right? I've heard the term mentioned in a number of different discussions, but what does that mean?
Yeah, so when you put forces together, it's really what the Navy would say is power projection force, right? You have submarines, both the fast attack submarines that go around to try to find other submarines or to get situational awareness. You have the ballistic missile submarines that are part of the strategic deterrent. And then you have the power projection resources. You have expeditionary strike groups that are their fundamental fighting arm is delivering Marines. Carrier strike groups, it's the air wing. The air wing is the power along with the surface combatants that may have power projection in their standard missile batteries and some of the things that they can project power offensively or help defend that force as it moves around. So the carrier strike group is an aggregation of a carrier air wing, which can have about 9 squadrons if you count all the helicopters and the detachments for the onboard delivery and logistics equipment. And so maybe 75 airplanes across those squadrons and about a little under 3,000 people overall. And that's an air wing commander. Then you have the carrier itself. That's about another 3,000 folks. So you put the two together, you're at a 5,000 person contingent between just the carrier and the carrier air wing. The destroyer squadron that can vary. The destroyer between the carrier, the destroyers, and maybe some of the air warfare ships that would be out there. I think we had 11 ships in my strike group, the Roosevelt strike group. But that's when you put all those together, it's the ability to get situational awareness, protect the carrier, and for the carrier to operate in sanitized water space around it, both subsurface, surface, and the ability to go out and fly and establish itself in international waters to establish a presence, U.S. presence to either to deter or to encourage stability in regions. So that's about 7,000 folks overall when you put that all together. So we have about 10 of them at any one time. That not all of them are out, but they're all tied to our nuclear aircraft carrier fleet.
Interesting. So, and you were in charge of, like you said, the Roosevelt group, correct?
Right.
Okay. Used this teaser a second ago with your rollover in Congress, but one of the things that is a big achievement in your overall career is being appointed as a rear admiral. So,
Sure.
How did did you know that was part of the progression? Was this something that you were striving for, or did it something that just kind of went along some of the choices you made in your career?
Yeah, it's more the latter. I think the career development path, once you enter your warfare specialty, whether you're driving ships, submarines, or an aviation platform, the personnel management system's designed to give everyone an opportunity, should they make all those gates, to have operational command at sea. So in my world, that was an F-18 squadron command, strike fighter squadron, as we would call it in the Navy. But a destroyer commander would be the same, and a submarine commander could be the same for a fast attack boat. And there's some other elements out there that the Navy will do that. So at each one of those things, just like we talked about in the squadron as a young junior officer, it's competitive. You move up, and some folks get picked for that department head job to go run the maintenance department while being a pilot, or run the operations department and safety departments at that pier. And then those folks will compete, and probably one of four of those 4 people competing will be selected for command. So at next down, you'll have some group that falls on the floor from the junior officer group to become that department head level person, and then probably 1 out of 4 of those folks will pick up that operational command. Some may pick up a special mission command to go down to training command and have command, but it kind of next down. And then as from that operational command, those 9 squadrons, 8 probably competitive Navy commanders would compete for either major command. A command as a Navy captain, an 06. That could be a carrier air wing commander, which is what I had the privilege to do. That could be selection for the nuclear pipeline to be eventually in the running to be a nuclear powered aircraft carrier commander. And maybe a third possibility would be a shore installation commander, would be one of those. And those are kind of and then there's some recruiting districts and some other things that kind of fall in. That folks can end up from those command selections at 05, and then that aggregated command to be that air wing commander or a destroyer squadron commander or that aircraft carrier commander, or kind of the next competitive piece. And then when you go to that, I think every year there's another selection. So all the folks who've had that level of command then are eligible for selection to the flag rank. In each one of these selections, it's kind of your performance, how that racks against the cohort you're competing with based on your year group. So the year you graduated or were commissioned, you have the clock starts in your total career service. So all those things kind of go together. Your competition, needs of the Navy, your skill set, which is one of the reasons to go wide, to be a corporate leader in the Navy. Do you understand how money moves in Washington? Do you understand the resources and requirements process? Do you understand the operational mission? Well, you think everybody should, right? So that's sort of the entry level bar. Or do you understand the people process for the Navy, or some of the things that go with strategy and policy? And then based on the needs of the Navy and the holes they have, they have them when they have them, and your timing, and then maybe your skill set and developmental tours outside of your warfare specialty sets you up for those things. And it's a tough percentage play. So I was fortunate that timing was just kind of worked out for me. And I'll answer the question the way Vice Admiral John Cotton, who was the chief of Naval Reserves one time, who an F-18 pilot as well, his capstone class, where they send all the 1-stars from all the services to come in and kind of meet each other so that they have a Rolodex for when as long as they stick around, they'll have somebody that they've met and have spent some time with to get to know. He said former Chairman Powell came over to address his capstone class, and the words to the group was, "Congratulations, you represent the top 1% to 2% of each of your services, and you're to be congratulated. This is a great opportunity going forward to be the leaders of the force as we go forward." That said, if the airplane you're going to get on this afternoon to fly to your next destination were to crash and all aboard are killed, we could fill up another one next week with equally qualified people. So
there's a humbling statement.
So the point is, there's so much talent out there. It's just timing, and it just kind of works out the way it does. And then the thing you want to do is just kind of run with the opportunity you get and go from there.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective too, right? Because you think about it, and congratulations, you're now part of this 1%. But now, even though you are special because you are the 1%, look around. You are amongst all these other people that are the 1%. So now you're normal again amongst your peers that are in this group. So it's now time for you to make a decision on how you want to grow, how you want to excel, right? Which you took a really interesting, opportunity, and you had the fortunate chance to work alongside John McCain in his office, correct?
Yeah, I did that a little bit earlier in the career, but yeah, so kind of in that go broad. I went broad twice, which the first one was that Air Force exchange tour. Mm-hmm. That those normally had gone unfilled, but because we were doing that peace dividend and drawing down, some of those previous exchange tour opportunities opened up. Went to do my department head tour out at an F-18 squadron in the West Coast. And then the opportunity to come up to help Navy. The Navy was in, this was the time frame when the Air Force was buying the F-22 and the Navy was moving from the Hornet to the Super Hornet. There were some challenges on the Hill with getting the perspective across about why Navy was moving away from the F-14 and towards the F-18 Super Hornet, which was going to be a reduction in the number of officers in some cases because all Tomcats are 2-seat. Some of those squadrons were going to be replaced with some single-seat variants of the F-18. And there were also some testing things that were going on at the same time between the two airplanes that were having some challenges. So one of the things the Navy was looking for was someone who had some fleet experience in that platform who could come up and potentially be on the staff as a fellow to be that face of and to kind of have the ear of the leadership and the House and Senate Armed Services folks who kind of chaperone those issues through as services try to do that procurement. So through a series I've followed, there were a couple of us who came through that were F-18 guys, and I got the opportunity to be a fellow on the staff, U.S. Senator John McCain. So, and he, of course, an old Navy man. His transition to elected office had come after he was the active duty Navy captain, Senate Affairs officer there So he was very fond of keeping Navy footprint in his office. So it was, I tell you, tremendous education. Um, the thing that set me up for probably a little bit of a risky pull for the operational command pick, because I'd done two kind of off the path uh, things, but that was a need of the Navy deal, and it worked out for me because I was fortunate over time to watch how money moves in D.C. from inside the Pentagon, of how the services generate their requirement, make their budget requests, and then execute those dollars, and then to see what happens over at the White House as they prepare that at the highest level of the executive branch to make some trades, and then really get it over to the Hill and understand where the questions come from and the relationships and the folks on those professional staff. So invaluable, and it's a skill and an experience that I leverage today, and even in my current role, just to understand how to the engagement of the representatives of the nation who make choices, tough choices on where dollars should go, and really how to be advocates for those things, and what I hope to be is an objective and principle based way of doing it.
Yeah, it was one of the early career things that I was fortunate to learn about was follow the money.
Yeah.
If you can follow the money on how it moves around from Congress into the Pentagon, you can see where all the priorities are. Mm-hmm. You can see where the priorities are lacking. You can see what programs are going to be, heightened as far as, just different types of resources and which ones are going to be cut. I mean, if you just follow the money, it'll tell you quite a bit of a story as it relates to the now Department of War and the way that things are done. And I mean, and that translates to many just, kind of corporate operations as well. You follow the money and you can see how businesses, I mean, with corporate structures like holding companies and the such, mm-hmm. are positioning themselves for future, opportunities. So like you said, an invaluable type of set of experience. And, another very interesting and I'm assuming can be exciting and tense at the same time, being on the Hill and seeing how Congress operates and the such. I mean, there's never really a dull day in Congress, right? So
yeah, I tell you, Dan, for me, now it's been a bit, right? It's been a few years, but the tenor of the work that could get done, and regardless of which side of the aisle your member was on, what I was struck with and really reinforced my faith in the process the founders established. They kind of knew human nature. They kind of knew how things were going and had these series of checks and balances. But I can tell you, got to work with some famous names. Senator Kennedy was in the office, the relationship in the staff, their military team. And what you found, the unifying effect of national security, one. Two, regardless of the why, the heartfelt principle reasons why people had the positions they held, and then the process kind of forced finding some middle ground. So it just really reinvigorated my faith and trust in the great experiment the founders set forth for us, almost 249 years ago, right?
Yeah.
As you say. So that was kind of the coolest thing, and frankly, just how hard some of those young men and women are working for not much pay, and being part of the team and just doing it from really kind of an altruistic reason to kind of be up there and see how it goes. A great slice of Americana, and just to be familiar, it's a far cry from Schoolhouse Rock and how a bill becomes a law. But it was fun to watch, and fun to watch Senator McCain do it, because he was.
He was truly special.
Well, if they needed something done, and he needed to kind of get something knocked out on a timeline, he had that unique ability to kind of get through it, and because he had that great background, right, just from being in an expansion seat in Arizona and then rolling in behind Barry Goldwater into his Senate seat. So he had the great power to kind of be a very principled person, because he had the constituency that really kind of supported him to do that. So I think it just a great. Once in a, I don't know where I would put the time span, it's one of those unique folks.
But being able to resonate with him on the Navy side
yeah.
as well, I mean, that just has so much connective tissue. I mean, being a patriot, being a someone that had served, now working on incentives and opportunities and priorities from a congressional perspective. I mean, all of these just pieces tying together is extremely rare and a fortunate opportunity, which kind of leads to another interesting and fortunate opportunity. Along your career path, you had the ability to be involved with the White House, right? So why don't you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's everybody's kind of familiar with Air Force One, the Marine helicopter that lands on the South Lawn, and Marine One, whichever. And that one follows the president. So whenever the president's aboard any aircraft, it becomes fill in the blank one. But the White House Military Office, its job is to really, in a nutshell, and I'll use just try to stay in the middle of the road here. It's really to ensure that the president, who really kind of has three hats, can execute those anywhere on the planet, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's head of state, chief executive, and commander in chief. So and any decision that has to be made in any one of those realms is really kind of what that White House team does. The mill office does transportation and connectivity. So the mill aides from the services, carrying the football. You have the Presidential Airlift Group, that fleet of blue and white airplanes, including the big 747s, and the Marine helicopters that do that in between kind of lift, as well as the communication side, which is really the effectiveness. One is move and have that ability to work with the Secret Service and make sure that all the movements happen the way they're supposed to, with options, and then really the ability to communicate to whatever level you need to for those three positions that the president does. So it's really a fascinating place, and an office in the East Wing, just across from the First Lady's spaces over there. Is kind of just that slice of the mission, and being in as historic a location as you can think of, and in the heart of governance there for the nation was a fun opportunity. Great people, and a really fun mission set at the same time.
Yeah, and also yet another interesting perspective, right?
Sure.
Being able to see now where the commander in chief is, doing his day-to-day operations, like you said, following that one wherever it goes, whether it be Air Force One or any of the other systems that he decides to take on that day, how those decisions are executed, carried out, and all of the intricate details of the experience that you've had going into, Congress, and how they're executing these things on decisions, or going into, like I said, now the Department of War, and how the SecDef is doing their decisions. The Navy is doing their part. So all of this, you've gotten the full spectrum of pieces, right? A rather illustrious and long career that you had here, Jay. And I believe it was in 2021, you decided to, hang up your gloves and call it, and move on to new opportunities.
Sure.
What's keeping you busy now?
Well, I retired, and then like many, it's what do you want to do, right? And I think there was an article written by I think General Monday, who was one of the commandants at the turn of the century. Full page, may have been in the Sunday Washington Post. Commandant of the Marine Corps. He said, I did everything I ever wanted to do in the Marines. I led troops in combat. I led Marines in combat twice in Vietnam. I was a commandant, rose to be fortunate enough to be the commandant of the Marine Corps. And then there was on a Tuesday afternoon at the Iwo Jima Memorial, passing the staff to the next guy. And he said, and it's like I stepped out of the back of an airplane at 30,000 feet, because I never had and after commandant, I want to. So that journey was really kind of not nearly so resplendent as his time in, but it was with that same lack of thought. What is your encore? Like, the other people, and the jobs you meet is having met Neil Armstrong on one of the carrier deployments. You say, how does someone who's walked on the moon, the first man, what do you do for the rest of your life after you felt like you've you've had a pretty good ride. And I think for me, I kind of never had a plan, Dan. I was always, I've used I'm not half off of it. I've kind of Forrest Gump like experience. Just my feather has blown into some things, and it kind of just works out. So I tried retiring. I didn't think I wanted to go work for one of the large defense firms. Though I did throw my hat in for a few of them, I wasn't sure. Kind of like I said earlier in our discussions, I didn't think I ever wanted to be an airline pilot just because the flying was never going to compete. And I need to get involved and kind of get my hands dirty and get my mind into a thing. And then, so I tried a little consulting and went broad. And, what I found is, there's a lot of two stars that roll off the retirement truck here. There's nothing special about me. So what do you bring? And, as a generalist versus, the folks that own hardware and new programs and where do you fit? So, I had a bit of a struggle for a little while, but I was fortunate enough to kind of get into a relationship with you through a series of connections and reconnecting through a couple of shared experiences there. Because what I found is retirement wasn't suiting me well. I can't unplug. I have to have a purpose. I need to feel a part of a mission, and I have to believe in it. So I was able to do a little bit of that with consulting, and then the other part of my day, which I would say the lion's share of the hours, about 15 months ago, I was called from a former SEAL and classmate in college who said, I'm a commissioner for the governor in the state of Oklahoma for the Veterans Commission, and we got a little bit of a challenge over here and wondered if you'd be interested to come out and do that. So for the last 15 months, I've been the executive director for the state of Oklahoma's Department of Veterans Affairs. So great mission set, kind of be that bridge to take care of those folks who served and their experience of service kind of took more than maybe it did from some of the rest of us, and have an opportunity to kind of be the representative for the state and to make sure that those 270,000 veterans and their families were taken care of inside the state. And that's from everything from day-to-day benefits from interested entities from the state itself, all the way to up and including full-time residential care for those who need it. So it's been fun. All those things we talked about earlier about understanding how money moves and how it works and how to extract the most out of it and how to modernize and how to bring new processes and ways of doing be more efficient, and then taking care of the folks who do the actual work. It's been fun, and that's been a great mission. But I think it's been fun for me to see how that really weird and wide Navy career kind of was set me up perfectly to have all those skills and have a little bit of experience to be able to play that in, working with the legislature, working with the executive, and then really kind of going out with the folks and some of the foundations to work with partners, and then working with other states and coming back here to work with the national level leadership on the things that we can do to kind of bridge the gap between what the federal Department of Veterans Affairs does and how we individual states can plug in and take care.
And it's interesting to see, how that broad career impacts, and I can only speak personally from our interactions.
Sure.
The engagements that we had. I mean, just an hour ago, we're at the Navy Yard. We're meeting and talking about, some of their mission requirements and how that ties into microelectronics, which is a very unique topic in itself, to when we were over at INDOPACOM and we talked to, some of the leadership that was over at PAC Fleet, INDOPACOM, and their mission set, to even some of the early stuff that we were doing with STRATCOM. I mean, all of these different pieces we're pulling from microelectronics to workforce development to tensions that are happening, in the Indo-Pacific region.
Sure.
And all of that is an embodiment of your broad network, your broad understanding of all of the different pieces, how, like you said, the money moves, how the Department of Navy is set up to support some of these things, how the bigger Department of War is structured, and each of these different COCOMs or whatever it may be are integral parts to the bigger mission. So it really does kind of embody how all of that stuff just generally make sense in Jay Bynum's life.
Yeah, and it's kind of, we talked about some of the things that are outside, but inside the lifelines also set me up. So because I was always the kid who wanted to take the toaster apart and see how what's going on inside there, or what could be done differently. Ended up in some jobs in Navy. One for requirements and resources and understanding readiness and how it's funded. And really, it's a continuum, right? Future readiness being the things we buy for tomorrow, and then current readiness and how we make those balances and how we do the analysis for doing that. And then from some of the experience just from a discipline and the way my head works, ended up fortunate enough to be in the assessment division for Navy for everything from studies, war games, exercises, experiments, test model simulation, set that agenda for the Department of Navy and kind of help inform. And then moving from there to the formerly warfighting development side, which was the strategist for Navy. So what does the future Navy need to look like, and how do we bridge ourselves, and where do we take the risk in those discussions? So applying those skill sets and those tool sets and to understand, of course, the power of analytics and compute, the right tools and the right people, and how we're harnessing AI, doing that even now to say, what is the world of software as a service in the AI environment? How do I use, for example, do I go with the, press one, say what you need? Am I calling my bank, or am I calling the AI agent that has a conversation with me that can actually make the appointment, schedule, interact, and inform, because it has the entire panoply of policies and information at its fingertips and can make large language model conversations happen for those 270,000 veterans and or any other tool set that we want to apply those to. So as I kind of look at where the connective tissue might be, that's kind of how my mind has worked, which is I said, I kind of wanted to go wide, because the wider you get, it all connects, but because the common denominator is people.
You got me thinking here of, remember the endless loop of being transferred on phone calls?
Sure.
Now the AI bots, they'll get you what you need, like you said, your appointment and everything. But hold on, I got to transfer you to someone. You get to the next person. Wait, I'm not the right department. Let me get you to the next person. You spend 30 minutes on the phone trying to figure something out. Now, I mean, hesitantly, you trust the little AI bot on the other end, but it's effective. You get your text message saying, hey, your appointment's scheduled here, it's going to be here. And you're just thinking, well, shoot, that was a 2-minute, 3-minute conversation.
So Dan, I literally started this journey this past 6 months, and I'm one that I warned you of this, so rabbit hole here. We've got to stop being a storefront where it's you meet me at my time and place of convenience. I've got to be focused on the customer, right? What's the outcome for the customer? The thought process went from evolutionarily in my head in just a few months. And most of it is kind of the thing that we could talk about for hours, probably over some waters at least. We are, as my experimental psychologist dad would say, we don't do what we ought, we do what we've learned to do, right? So when I've been mired in process that I've done, there's no one gives you time in your day to evolve or explore or expand the process. We create an innovation cell or somebody else to go look at it, but we only know our experience, and we will try to hyper improve that process, but we don't look at what might be the art of the possible given the current state of play. So in our exercise in this very piece for the answer on the phone was, gosh, how do I even get here past 8 to 4? How do I get here from 8 to 8 or 8 to 10? How do I meet them where they are? How do I go and do that? And then, you call up and something hits your YouTube feed, and the guy's having a conversation with his AI agent at a used car dealership. And they call up and they said, hey, I'm interested in the Tesla. Which one, the gray one or the red one? And the AI agent is having this conversation. And he goes, well, do I qualify for a tax break? Well, it's listed for under $25,000, and provided you make less than $150,000. I mean, well, yes, you would if you fall in these bins. And it's all that stuff, as opposed to press 7 now and read the laundry list and try to get a human to even touch the phone. I may not need a human. I can run this thing 24 hours a day, save the full-time equivalent for the salary, and apply that to another person who actually can do the work. So
and it's
art
convenient
of the possible for them.
Yeah, it's convenient for the person that has the need, not the person that's fulfilling the need,
right?
Which is a huge difference, because like you said, you rewind back, there's a bounding box. Hey, you have a need, Jay. You're calling me. I work 9 to 5. I hope you can fit it within this, irregardless of your personal schedule, your life's, I mean, the work that you're doing on a daily basis. I mean, anything that is there, you got to fit this or else call back tomorrow. And I also don't work on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, I mean, now you circumvent all of that and you get the AI bot Sunday evening at 1 in the morning. Sure. Why not? Get your answer.
And plug into the system, have the resource and retrieval. And as you said, it's not at my time and convenience. You don't have to take paid time off to come see me, which is one of the reasons why we're, I think, in the service industry missing people, is because we've, as you said, we've made it convenient for the provider as opposed to convenient for the customer.
Now, this is a perfect segue into kind of what I would say is with all of these different facets of knowledge that you have in your experience, pulling it into a final question of technology, right? AI being one of the major technology verticals that not only the world is investing in, Department of War has obviously made this a priority. Where do you see the biggest technological opportunity for technological advantage within either the Navy or the Department of War?
Man, that's a great question. I think it is kind of rewinding that back to that. We don't do what we ought to do. We do what we've learned to do. And I think there's tremendous power in taking an assessment of the art of the possible and the near term possible as the manufacturing techniques have changed. We were talking chiplets yesterday. We've talked about hyperconverged performance that happens. The industry, I won't mention any names, but they're really big, and we see them everywhere. Some of them even have their own TV channels. They want to sell you the commoditized version where their investment has been amortized. It's now scalar. It's commoditized. It's the next version of the pedestrian level piece. For not much more, the enhanced power of compute, the things that can happen in the warfare arenas where I can now build, which is the demand signal from, I think, the Department of War. I've got to have very broad, very accurate, three-dimensional, from space to the seabed, situational awareness of the operational environment to targeting level precision. And I've got to be able to have it degrade and rebuild on its own and have the ability to process and recover at the edge of that environment, and where my operational edge meets the other operational edge. I think we're at a place where that can happen, but does our decision process as a Department of War, does our acquisition process as a Department of War, and does our sense of urgency as a national support base from civilians and institutions support that level of activity and change? But we have the ability to kind of do the things that would be high leverage, and then allow us to do things in a very economical way, which we're watching in on the world landscape, whether that's in the opportunities in Ukraine, where you don't go high end, you go ubiquitous low end, but you use the power of that information and the power of those things to take care of itself, to really have a in-game and kind of tectonic effect.
So what I gathered from this, which I think is really interesting, is you're saying, let's remove the unnecessary human in the loop at certain stages, but redivert that energy of that human into areas where it is more required. So allow the technology systems themselves to streamline these processes. Going back to your phone example, right? Hey, don't call me 9 to 5, call me whenever, because the system can do that. But the person can hand you the keys when you buy the car, or the person can be there to make the, go, no go decision. If it's a drone flying over and they need to know, okay, do we have confirmation that this is an adversary and we need to take it out, or stuff like that, where the human is required to make a human-like decision. But all of the other sausage making pieces where the human has usually been in the loop can now be streamlined with the appropriate technology. Do I have it pretty close?
Yes. I think I'd take it one additional layer. One of the structures and institutional approaches we've had in really it's just a national ethos, I think, in the United States. Is we've wanted to we've wanted ownership of those kinds of decisions, right? Someone who's the accountable person, because we're a rule-based nation, right? Rule of law. We want to have accountability and authority for those decisions, but we are in the past. I think this is almost a philosophical debate that can be informed by this level of and power of compute. Right now, thinking, Dan, so it's worth every penny.
I'll use your term. Let's riff on it. Let's do it.
In the past, I think we've relegated ourselves to that because we had too many unknowns. We had so many unknowns. In the risk volume, we had to have a decider and someone we trusted their judgment. Colin Powell would say you can't wait to 99% certainty. You have to act at 60 or 65% because you don't have the time. You'll lose the tactical decision space, and you might lose by default just because you can't have your effect. But I think at the speed of compute and the ability to have this sensing, if we get the right level of awareness, right? So it's not soda straw that we're patching together in a batch processing way, but really a wide-eyed stare that I can capture in that data. So much more of this goes from reactive response to pre-planned decision. Because I can now, with the power of compute and some of these engines and a wargaming thing, to get out of a 30-year-old decision engine model for even a campaign level of warfare, I can put in variables that can run at super high speed because I have the chip processing power and I have the data availability that I can look at all of that in the aggregate with one big stare. I can move a lot of what used to be in situ decisions to probably pre-planned responses. And I can have that library populated. So I will have had ownership of that decision, but it was in the algorithm because I've approved the algorithm. Yes, 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 because I've come up with those circumstances. And now I just let the decision application at machine speed make the decisions we've pre-planned. And then that reduces the ones where I have to have the owner of the decision in human form make a decision. On those rare cases I'm outside and can probably promote that. I just don't think we've thought about it to that end as we get to agentic and subsequent levels of AI.
Oh, I agree with you on this one, Jay. And let me put it like once again in my own words here. Instead of having segmented data sets where we independently look at different scenarios in order to achieve a decision point, vertically integrating all of these so there is a streamlined holistic data set to pull from so that the if-then scenarios can feed into more data and allow the machine to solve the problem versus one set of data that says, hey, if this happens, then you have to make a decision somewhere, and it's not all interconnected. I think that is a really interesting piece. You're really closing the loop on the decision-making process and simplifying it for whoever is on the other end versus just setting them up with a lot more either question sets or even worse, problems to figure out. So that's an interesting perspective here, Jay.
I think it's just really it's a lot of Boolean, as you say, it's a lot of Boolean logic, but if you look at those scenarios and you just start playing them off each other, but I think we could probably have AI just derivate all that, as much of it as ahead. And you say, these are the answerable questions based on what you've already told me. Here's the priorities we would recommend based on what you've told me your priorities are. Here's how we would play, and here's some risk level and confidence interval associated with that. And then you kind of come with, well, here's the unresolved. And as I said, so you can get to warfare execution at the speed of compute as opposed to man on the loop. It's really kind of man on the loop, not man in the loop, and it may be man monitor loop, just to kind of really eliminate that decision because it's, not all nations will come at it from a Westphalian view.
Yeah,
they're going to take a lot more collateral damage as have a higher tolerance and appetite for collateral damage than we might, and that's a way that I think we could get to. Now that's once again, as my old bosses would tell me, that I'm a little altruistic to think you can kind of get there. But conceptually, I would say that's the power of the future as we start to look at where this might go and who's working on.
Oh, and I see a spectrum of applicability. I mean, across, the whole gamut, everything from the discussions you had at the beginning with wargaming related items to even some of the scientific evaluations that happen with testing, modeling, simulation, adopting this approach in a more integrated fashion of data sets, which are not ever created to or intended to merge together, but formulating a way to allow these different data sets to have some kind of interconnectivity to allow, like we said, the decision maker to make said decision. So Admiral Bynum, Jay, I mean, this was great, man. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and looking forward to continuing working together, seeing where, life will end up taking you, and, remaining friends. So
yeah, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity. It's a lot of fun.